Hey, what's going on, viewers of the Fantasy Flavor Podcast? My name is Dylan, and I'm excited to be back here with a one-on-one interview here with. Last time we had more of a film guy on here. He talked about Dynasty, but we're gonna have another film guy. But he's gonna talk a lot about Devi, a lot about the 2020-21 class. We're gonna have Ray on here, and I want to give a little background on Ray for all of you. He's actually a retired D2 football player. He's a law grad. He's a senior Devi analyst for Dynasty Nerds, and he also has his own podcast. That is Destination Devi. That is, once again, Destination Devi. So make sure to check that out here when you're done listening. He's also part of the Scott Fishbowl 9 kind of league there. We talked about it a little bit before in my past, kind of with like a charity kind of fantasy league. So that's awesome. But how you doing today, Ray?
I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
Um, you know, we both just kind of watched the NBA Finals. I kind of had the Warriors in seven was my pick. Personally, I didn't care who won, but you're always a little mad when you don't get your pick right. What did you think about the finals?
It was my team is the Lakers, so it's been over for us for a while. But I was definitely, I like watching basketball, so I was hoping that it went to 7 games. But the better team won, and I know Golden State had a lot of injuries, but they benefited from some of those injuries in their title runs over the past couple of years. So Toronto, they were the better team. They pulled it out, and congratulations to Toronto for pulling that out in Oracle.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kind of a sad way to end there in Oracle, but you talked a little bit about it before. It was so unfortunate because we saw Clay go out on crutches, not clutches, crutches. KD, had his torn Achilles and had that surgery. Luckily, he
Yeah.
seems to be doing well. So it just, it stinks, man. To like see all these injuries kind of happening. Granted, you're right. The Warriors did luck out with injuries themselves, so kind of the whole circle of life, kind of karma bit them there. But I think that's enough of the NBA Finals. I kind of want to move on here, and I want to ask you I want a little more background on you. We kind of talked about kind of how you analyze their senior Devi analyst for Dynasty Nerds. You own your own podcast. It's all kind of film centric, I believe, and you can correct me on that. But why do you like watching film so much?
I think as a former college football player, and I'm not gonna get on here and act like I played at Alabama or Clemson, but playing the game, it really there are things that you notice when you're watching film that you kind of identify what skills or traits may make a successful NFL player. And those are things that analytics and stats can't tell you alone. I consider myself 51% film, 49% analytics. I like to back up what I see on film with analytics. And if there's something that I see from a statistical standpoint, I want to go check out the film to see how that player moves, what it looks like, how those yards created, what it actually looks like on tape in game. So I think there's a lot of value to be gained by both, but I just enjoy watching these gladiators play this violent sport, and you have to appreciate the manner in which they do it. And you can't gather that information without watching the tape and watching the film. And that's why I really, a lot of my takes and opinions are film based analysis. And that's just how I roll. And that's probably because I spent so much time in my playing days watching film and seeing what receivers did well when I was out there, or what running backs did well or didn't do well. So that's sort of I carried that over to my dynasty and Debbie dynasty analysis.
Yeah, that's honestly awesome, and I like, in my perspective here, how you're just not just kind of only film, strictly film. You kind of want to use the two to help each other, which is I think it's a big part of the industry because you have successful dynasty kind of analysts such as yourself who have results, good results, based off of film, but you also have some statistical guys who kind of analyze their stuff using a lot of statistics compared to film like you use. So it's just kind of interesting to see these different types of flavors of strategy kind of come in. But they both may lead you down different paths, different players. But the end result is some hits, some misses, some people you were kind of right on, kind of wrong on. I just think it's so fascinating how everybody thinks so differently, yet we can all kind of love the game. And there's no right way, but we can all kind of win our championships in different ways. So
Correct. Agreed.
Yeah, so I kind of want to start off here, and I was telling Ray a little bit off camera, kind of why I wanted him specifically on. He knows a lot about the 2020 class, and I think that's super important because a lot of people are kind of banging their, hand on the table. Buy these 2020 first. Buy these 2020 seconds. Heck, buy these 2020 thirds. I don't know. Some people are crazy out there, man. Um, and I'm kind of like, wait a second. Like, one, I bought a lot of 20. I listened. But after kind of buying, I'm like, what did I just invest in? I'm kind of investing in a mystery because the class looks great, right? I'm not going to lie. I don't watch much film, but from what I can tell, we have some really, really good talent that could come into the NFL draft next year. But we also kind of have to remember, I don't know if you remember last year, but some of the more flashy names we had were like the Bryce Loves, the Rodney Andersons, and those guys, they're kind of an afterthought now because they got injured, right? So it's just kind of, I don't know if those guys you were high on necessarily. Maybe Bryce Love, maybe Rodney Anderson, but isn't it just kind of crazy? I think it's just crazy how those guys could be like some of the best running back prospects that we thought, the summer of last year, and now look where they are. They're like behind like great running backs in bad spots. So I think it's just so interesting there.
Yeah, and that's what happens during the college football season. Bryce Love, not last season, but the season before. I mean, he was a Heisman Trophy finalist. He had a fantastic season, but you can see throughout this past college football season injuries and things that were going on within the Stanford offense. He did not look like the same player. So going into the 2019 draft process for dynasty purposes, he was an afterthought. I did not spend 1 ounce of time considering Bryce Love, thinking about Bryce Love when Rodney Anderson tore his ACL. For me, that was it. There was no way that I was going to invest high draft capital from a dynasty purpose in Rodney Anderson. So, watching the film and paying attention to college football from August until the national championship provides a lot of a benefit and a lot of strategy and a lot of knowledge that dynasty owners and Devy leaguers in particular can use to their advantage. So going into the 2019 draft season, I had sold majority of my 2019 rookie picks early, and I mean during the season. I knew the class was going to be weak. I knew that there were only a couple of people that I was really going to key in on, and I like to say I'm always a contender in all of my leagues, and I knew my picks would not be high. So I had absolutely no problem in October selling my 2019 first round draft pick because I knew that I just was not going to be interested during the draft season. And when it came around, if there was a player that I wanted, well, then I'll figure out a way to try to acquire that individual later on. But some of those guys that people were geeking out on this past draft season, I had zero interest in whatsoever.
Well, I want to give you props there because the 2019 class, just kind of my view, you kind of have like those top three, I guess maybe four running backs there. I guess what you think of Darrell Henderson and kind of N'Keal Harry. And that's kind of it for people you can really feel confident on. There's some other names and some other interesting spots, but the confidence level, for you at least, and for myself, I can agree with you here, isn't as high, especially from a talent perspective. So I guess my first question for you is, what's different between let me preface it this way. Um, are you higher on the 2020 class? Like, how high are you? And then, how high are you on it? Excuse me. And then, so if you're really high on the 2020 class, why is it so much different from 2019 then?
All right, so let me ask you a question. Where you live, what is like a fancy, nice steakhouse restaurant? Like, name something where you're at. What's a fancy, nice steakhouse where you live
Um, well, the only steak I've had is at Longhorn, which isn't fancy, but
at? Okay.
I'm just keeping it honest. I don't
Well,
get
let me
steak
tell you
much.
something. Let me tell
Yeah.
you something. Down here in Texas, you go if you want a good juicy steak, you want to take your girlfriend, your significant other out for a wonderful evening where you're going to be wined and dined and they're going to lay the napkin out for you. You go to Capitol Grill. You go to Seasons 52. That's the 2020 class. 2020 class, you got to make reservations. It's valet parking. You've got to wear your nice clothes. That's the 2020 class. That's getting a steak, right? Like that's what the 2020 class
Mm.
is. 2019 is like going to Applebee's, ordering a steak to go, then slapping it in a to-go box, you taking it home and then throwing it in the microwave. It's not even comparable. The talent is deep from the running back position, the wide receivers. The only place that I feel the 2019 class was superior than the 2020 class is at the tight end position. Tight end position is not very deep in 2020, but as far as the running backs, the wide receivers, and hell, the quarterbacks, I would take all of those guys over the players who were just drafted in the 2019 class. And I hate to use the cliche, but it's not close. I mean, it's really not close. And I've said on my podcast, I've said on Twitter, we as analysts, I really feel like we overextended ourselves in 2019 to like some of those prospects because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to give a top 12, a top 24, top 36, and be excited about these players. But when I'm looking at it and we are getting excited over Terry McLaurin and Alexander Madison and players like that, I just laugh because there are guys who will be going in the second round of the 2020 draft who would easily be top 10 picks in 2019. It's just that deep.
I do think deep's super important because 2019 was kind of, there's no clear one-on-one, but, it's super deep. And then the draft came, and a lot of good players kind of got bad landing spots, or they weren't drafted as high as maybe us fantasy football addicts kind of thought they were. And then you kind of look and you're kind of like, wow. I mean, the class we thought was deep, but maybe it wasn't as deep as we thought. So I think that's super interesting. But especially at the running back position, it was a pretty weak running back class. I mean, 2019, me and Josh Jacobs drafted in the first round. There are definitely some questions on even if he's a first round kind of running back, but he was taken there, whatever. So I guess my first question here for you is kind of looking back on the previous draft classes. We had, I believe, the year of Leonard Fournette, right? You had kind of 2-3 backs, even I think 4 or 5 backs, honestly, go in the first 2 rounds. In 2018, that draft class, I believe, you had a whole bunch of running backs like Nick Chubb go early, Penny, Michelle, Saquon Barkley. How does the 2020 class stack up to kind of those 2 previous draft classes, specifically at the running back position?
Well, I think Leonard Fournette was a very good selection because he's been a starter in the NFL, and when he's healthy, he's one of the most productive backs. Whether it's volume based, however you want to slice it, he's a productive NFL running back. He's very talented, and moving on to 2018, like you said, you've got. I thought that class was phenomenal from the running back position, and I invested high draft capital in the early part of dynasty drafts in the running back position from Saquon Barkley, Darius Geis, on Johnson, like you said, Nick Chubb, Sony Michelle, and even some still have a little faith in Ronald Jones there. So I believe the 2020 class is the best running back class since 2018, which isn't that long ago. But as far as what we just saw in 2019, DeAndre Swift and Travis Etienne, you'll hear those names over and over. You'll hear Jonathan Taylor and Cam Akers, but it's so much deeper than that. And the thing that makes this class so attractive is you have to look at the NFL and the current running backs who are sort of what I say fringe. They're holding on to their positions by a thin thread, right? You've got players like who I'm high on, admittedly, Derrick Henry and Marlon Mack, Aaron Jones, players who high draft capital in Aaron Jones's case. He was a 5th round pick, I believe, so there wasn't a lot invested in him. There's a new head coach there. If he doesn't show that he's capable of being the lead guy, he'll be replaced down in Houston. Lamar Miller, Deonta Foreman. There are a lot of openings for potential starting running back jobs, and the 2020 class will deliver that from the top end of the first round to the back end of the second round. There will be players selected in those rounds who will be NFL starters, or I'll say this, at least have the opportunity and the talent profile to become successful NFL starters.
Yeah, I think 2020, it really could be the last strong running back class in a while to really supplant itself with like good landing spots because we're really rich already in the running back position. But there are those fringe spots, and all it takes is one bad year, one injury maybe, And next thing you know, they could be drafting early draft capital in the running back position just because it's the best player available on an impactful position. Regardless if you think, oh, running backs are just, replaceable players. Tell that to Saquon Barkley. Nobody hears Saquon, but, running backs can do special things. So I kind of want to take you a little bit on my journey. When I first heard about 2020, and even looking back, like once 2018 was drafted, once Saquon was kind of drafted, I was kind of like, well, who's the next generational running back? And I kind of looked a little bit, and it was Jonathan Taylor blew up his freshman year, right? Blew up his
Correct.
sophomore year, right? And he's
Correct.
kind of the consensus, like, number 3, like, kind of Debbie running back. Why isn't he number 1? Because Travis Etienne, great kid, honestly, incredible acceleration, right? Super fast. Reminds me a little bit of Jamal Charles, DeAndre Swift. I hear Alvin Kamara thrown around a lot, which I think is such a generic comparison, but whatever. It's warranted. DeAndre Swift's awesome. But why isn't Jonathan Taylor number 1 with such dominant? I mean, this is dominant production. Like, why isn't he number 1? What's holding him back?
Well, I think that's the thing that's so unique about this class. So in 2019, there was not consensus at the top because nobody really wanted that pick. People wanted to drop back to the third or fourth pick and let sort of the board fall to them. 2020, right now, you'll have three, four different running backs that people have as their number 1. It's not because they don't like the other guy or the Swift or the ETN or Taylor, they're not talented. It's just personal preference at this point. It's just, what do you like? Do you like apple jelly or grape jelly? I mean, it's still jelly, and that's sort of what 2020 is. I know a lot of people who feel Travis Etienne is the 101, is the running back 1. I know some people who have Jonathan Taylor. I was on Twitter before I jumped on this podcast with you, and there were people saying that Jonathan Taylor is the next Nick Chubb. He should be the first running back drafted in 2020. His production is unreal. I mean, over 2,000 scrimmage yards, I believe, in the first 2 seasons at Wisconsin. You can't deny what he's done as a runner. I just believe that there are other running backs in this class who offer a little more versatility, who don't have the wear and tear on their body that Jonathan Taylor does. And my biggest concern with Taylor is he's got 12 fumbles already in his early career. In 2 seasons to have 12 fumbles, that's, you can't put the ball on the ground. And I don't care how talented you are. We've seen it time and time again in the NFL. If you cannot hold on to the ball, you're not going to play. And what shocked me is I've watched Wisconsin play a ton, and I've seen Jonathan Taylor play since his freshman season. I never went to look at his size because when I watched him play, he just looked like a big running back. I thought he was 6'1", 6'2", 220 pounds. But when I looked him up and he was a lot smaller than that, and I looked at the way he played and the usage that he had, it's just concerning to me. I would prefer to have a more versatile running back, whom I believe ETN and Swift are faster players than Jonathan Taylor, without the wear and tear. In DeAndre Swift's case, shows phenomenal receiving prowess. DeAndre Swift cut into Nick Chubb and Sony Michel's workload as a true freshman. That right there tells me that although he may not put up or have put up the gaudy numbers Taylor has, to take carries away from, everyone loves Nick Chubb right now. You would love to have Nick Chubb on your dynasty roster. Sony Michel, I know he's got a knee injury, but he was a very effective player in his rookie season. To have a 19-year-old kid, 18-year-old come in and put those guys on the bench for stretches during 2 seasons ago, that tells me all I need to know about DeAndre Swift's talent profile. I think Jonathan Taylor is a very good running back prospect. I think he's got a lot of talent. There are just 3 or 4 guys that I prefer over him, and it's just personal preference.
Okay, that makes more sense to me because that's just when I first jumped into looking at this class. It's like, obviously you look at who was the best running back last year. That was deemed by college football Jonathan Taylor. So I kind of looked there, and it was kind of interesting to see. But that makes sense. The good news is, I think, for Taylor is while he isn't like 6'2", 6'3", and the workload is definitely concerning, which would kind of make me weary of selling high immediately, kind of once he produces really highly. Good news is I think those are fixable issues, which is awesome for Taylor. And keep in mind, that's the running back 3, kind of consensus running back 3 in the class. So I kind of want to talk about, I'm going to take a guess here. your running back one is DeAndre Swift. Is that correct?
That's right.
I'm kind of smart. I looked at your film breakdown there on Twitter at RayGQ, by the way, at RayGQUE. Ray Rage Q, I believe that's how you kind of want it pronounced, but that's at RayGQUE. So make sure you check him out because he does a lot of good work there on Twitter, where I actually became a fan of his work. So if DeAndre Swift's your number one running back, tell me why I should take him over ETN, over Taylor, over Akers, all these other names you mentioned. Why should I take Swift over them?
DeAndre Swift is a complete running back. I mean, he's built low to the ground. He's only about 5'9" and a half, maybe 5'10". He's probably closer to 5'9", 220 pounds. But he has elite movement skills from the running back position. He can cut on a dime. He's physical. He can do it at all three levels. Out of the backfield, he's shown that he can catch the ball. He's a durable back between the tackles. He can make phone booth type agility cuts. When there are three or four guys around him, he's got this thing where I don't know what it's called, a dead leg, a dead arm, where he just kind of lulls the defender to sleep, sort of Le'Veon Bell esque, and just plants that right leg in the ground. And it's so fun to watch. I love the way that he moves with the ball in his hands, and when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, he's a very good blocker. So I don't think NFL offensive coordinators will have a problem with him in pass protection. And out of the backfield, he is a dynamic weapon. And again, I go back to I want to see if you are a talented running back, if you are that guy, you're going to play as a true freshman. And he had every reason to ride the bench his true freshman year. When you have Nick Chubb and Sony Michel in that backfield, there's no need for DeAndre Swift to play. You can redshirt him, or if you don't redshirt him, he can just sit there and learn from those two studs. And he cut into that workload. And there were stretches during that season with Georgia where DeAndre Swift was on the field in crunch time because he gave you that versatility. He gave you that big play ability. I'm not knocking ETN. I'm not knocking Taylor or any of those guys. But DeAndre Swift for me has when I watch him play, you see it. It's just like porn. When you see it, you know what it is. When you see DeAndre Swift play, you said that guy's an NFL running back. That guy's somebody that dynasty owners can build their roster off of for years to come. So barring any injuries, and you never want to see that happen, he's the guy for me who's my RB1. But I'll tell you this. This early in the process, I really don't like to rank players. I know I say that and then I put rankings out, but I really just like to tier them and put them in groups. So for me, the 2020 class is there are two people in that tier one, and it's DeAndre Swift and Travis Etienne. So whomever I ended up with, I really wouldn't care as long as I got one of those two. If that's what I was shooting for, they're sort of my top tier for 2020 right now, with a couple of sleepers who I believe have an opportunity to get close to that. But it's probably going to be Swift and ETN in that top tier for me.
Well, one, I was kind of cracking up at your little side mark joke you had there. I was trying to hold it in so you could talk. I like that one. I'm not sure my mother would, but I like that one. Secondly, yeah, I think that's true. So I have kind of a question here I want to ask you, but I feel like we wouldn't do justice to Travis Etienne if you wouldn't kind of talk about him. One, I don't watch film, so you can go ahead and tell me if my Jamal Charles comparison is kind of wrong. I don't know. I thought acceleration, Jamal Charles, right? But that's wrong. Can you kind of talk about ETN and why you like him and why he's in that tier with DeAndre Swift for you?
Well, I never really thought about that comparison. And when you said it, I was just like, well, I mean, his explosion and burst is very Jamal Charles esque because that's what ETN is. He improved so much from his freshman season at Clemson. Last year, he looked like a completely different player, and he's got that Jamal Charles esque burst. When he gets the ball, it's like he was shot out of a cannon a million miles an hour. That guy fast, and the difference is he's a lot bigger than Jamal Charles. He's put together and built more sturdy than Charles was, but that's actually not the worst comparison out there. I think that his I'm not going to even call it a knock, just the skill that I would like to have seen more last season, that I hope to see a little bit more this year, is his receiving ability. I think he only caught 12 passes last year. And what I always say on my podcast is just because a player did not demonstrate a skill in college does not mean that person is incapable of doing it in the NFL. So, okay, he didn't catch a lot of passes in college. That doesn't mean he won't be able to do pros, but I would just like to see it. But on tape, agility, speed, power, he's a complete running back. I mean, it's really honestly, if you had a coin and flipped it in the air and heads was DeAndre Swift and tails was Travis Etienne, and that's just what I had to roll with, I wouldn't lose an ounce of sleep over either of those guys. They both possess three down ability at the next level. They're home run hitters. They're fantastic running back prospects, and they should dominate this college football season and put up godly numbers once again.
Yeah, honestly in the past, I'm missing football so much this year. Starting up my own podcast, kind of getting more into tweeting about it and stuff. I miss football so much, so I haven't been as much into college. But definitely since 2020, I'm trying to. I was thinking about starting a series, just really breaking down 2020, and this could be part of it. I'm definitely going to go to college football this year, and I think all these guys, if health, and I think health isn't really much of an issue right now, at least. Knock on whatever. What do you have? Their health kind of, they stay healthy, they can produce. It's going to be a great college football season. But I I kind of want to know. So I'm not a film guy, right? So I really like player comparisons. I think we talked a little bit about this when we were talking to each other in the DMs, right? I like player comparisons because I'm not a great film guy, and a player comparison kind of helps me imagine what if I put this player, kind of that player comp, maybe more of like their college kind of production there, kind of
Right.
on this team or on this kind of level. I can kind of like mix and match, almost kind of imagine what they could do at the next level. Not necessarily what they will do, but what they could do. So for the top three backs we talked about, DeAndre Swift, ETN, and Jonathan Taylor. Um, do you have player comparisons quickly for those three guys?
I don't off the top of my head, but I'm going to give you some real quick. So if I had to
Okay.
compare DeAndre Swift, you know what? I don't want to do your show and my credibility a disservice by comparing. I try not to, and that's just part of it's hard for me. There are very few players that I have comparisons for. I've got a couple that I have publicly stated that I feel really, really good about. But right now, it's hard for me to comp Swift, ETN, and Jonathan Taylor's game to anybody in the NFL right now. I just that's not a part of my process. One, I think it's far, far too early to do that for the 2020 guys. And I say that, but I've got a 2021 guy comp, but I feel really confident about that. I'd like to wait until midway through their final, what I believe will be their final college football season, before I do that because they change. And I've seen players evolve year to year and they add different skill sets to their game. So I don't want to compare Jonathan Taylor to I'm just going to say a prime Jonathan Stewart who didn't catch the ball when this season Jonathan Taylor could catch 25 passes, and then I'll be looking back at the comp that I made early in June and be eating crow. So I will say this: all three of those guys have the potential to go in the NFL and light it up. And of the three, the one that I'm lowest on is Jonathan Taylor, and I saw that somebody that I respect in the industry, in the Debbie industry, say he's the next Nick Chubb. I can see that. When I watch Jonathan Taylor play, I can definitely see. When I saw that today, this evening actually, I said, that's not a bad comparison. I can see Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb. They have a similar play style for me. So of the three guys, I can give you that one, and I feel all right about that. ETN and Swift, I haven't really come up with that yet. I haven't. I think DeAndre Swift has agility like LaShawn McCoy. I truly believe that he has shady level agility. And ETN, he isn't Chris Johnson fast. He's not 4.2 fast, but the burst that Chris Johnson had when he was with the Titans, when ETN gets the ball and he explodes to the hole, I mean, he's got that level of burst. So no comp to Chris Johnson, no comp to Shady McCoy, but those are some traits that those guys have that remind me of NFL players.
A few things. One, I appreciate you trying to answer my question, even though you kind of disagree with the philosophy. I appreciate that. And now I'm definitely looking at player comparisons. I see your point, and I appreciate that so much with you just being transparent with me. That does mean, though, I have to have you back on the podcast if you're willing eventually when the year's over so we can do the player comparisons.
Absolutely,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Awesome. I'd love that. There's just so much I want to talk about. But I do think I'm going to take from memory, the one player comparison you did have and you felt confident on, maybe I'm wrong, you can correct me, was Percy Harvin and Jalen Rager. Is that right?
That's right. That
I'm,
is right.
I read that Twitter. I'm not lying to you, Ray. I know what's up. I know what's up. So I believe maybe I'm wrong here again. I don't want to be like I'm 100% right, but him and Jeudy are pretty close to you. So Judy's kind of that consensus guy, right? He's a consensus kind of number one wide receiver, best wide receiver since Amari Cooper, Sammy Watkins. A lot of really really big labels here for this 19, 20-year-old. I think he turned 20 a couple days ago.
Yeah.
But who's keeping track, man?
Yeah, right.
So can you kind of talk a little bit about why they're close for you? Why you like Jalen Rager? Why you like Jerry Jeudy? Kind of mesh those two guys together. I'm gonna guess they're kind of in the same tier for you. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, they are. They are definitely the top tier for me as far as the 2020 wide receivers are concerned. Jerry Jeudy, I mean, what's not to like about this player? He is fast. He has lateral movement. It looks like I don't know how he has knees. I don't know if you've looked at some of his highlights, but he can stop literally on a dime and reach full speed very, very quickly. He's a phenomenal. Oh, he's so good at wide receiver. Routes, hands, competitive toughness. The only thing he doesn't do is block, but I really don't care. I couldn't care any less about that for Jerry Jeudy. He's just an outstanding wide receiver. Uh, Now, granted, he has all world talent around him, and in college, that sort of eliminates some of those defensive schemes. You can't double Jerry Jeudy because you'll get burned on the other side by three other receivers who run 4.340s or faster, and that is not hyperbole, that is legit. So he's got tremendous opportunity, and he's playing with the best quarterback that Alabama's ever had in the history of their program, probably. So I'm not taking anything away from Jeudy, but Jalen Rager for me is wide receiver two in the 2020 class. And if anybody pushes Jeudy for that wide receiver one spot, I believe it's Jalen Rager. He's just
Yeah.
he's phenomenal.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Sorry to cut you off there. But yeah, Rager, I looked at some highlights, not necessarily film, and the kid is like made for like modern day NFL. We saw these like bigger wide receivers like the Hakeem Butler, like the DK Metcalf, kind of slide in those drafts, and we saw these smaller, shiftier guys. So I'm gonna be higher on Rager just because I think he fits the modern NFL, which you kind of just want smaller, shifty, more explosive guys. So he's definitely someone I like, and Jerry Jeudy kind of the same thing with him too, except he's doing it at Alabama with Tua Tagovailoa, who I butchered that. That's okay. I want to get a little more negative here though. Let's we've been pretty happy here on the Fantasy Flavor podcast, but you had a burning hatred, but you kind of backed off a little bit. I would say burning hatred, but we're gonna go with burning hatred because it's dramatic. For Laviska Shenault, but you kind of like the guy a little bit more. Explain to me your hate-love kind of evolution of your view of Laviska Shenault.
Well, I think it was just the way he was used at Colorado. And when I went and watched the film, well, let's say when I went and watched the highlights of Laviska Shenault, it was a lot of him catching bubble screens, him running plays out of a wildcat, him catching flare routes out of the backfield, short screen plays that he just kind of turned up the field, and especially his one of his bigger games was against Colorado State, which they are not a very good team as is. He was not a highly rated high school prospect coming out. At the opening in high school, he didn't have very good testing measurables. So for me, just in watching the highlights of LaVisca, he did absolutely nothing as a true freshman either. And in watching the highlights, I just was unimpressed. I just said, okay, he's dominating inferior competition. I've yet to see him run a 15-yard out. I really don't know how good he is as a wide receiver. But over the past couple of weeks, I had to look at myself in the mirror and call myself a hypocrite because I really was high on Paris Campbell. I thought Paris Campbell, not only did he land in a great spot, I believe his talent and athletic profile screamed potential and high upside. But Paris Campbell was used the same way Laviska Shenault was used. He was used close to the line of scrimmage. He had one of the worst A dots in college football. A lot of people thought he was a running back masked as a wide receiver. And in one token, I can't have love and praise for Paris Campbell, but then knock Laviska Shenault for doing some of the same things that Paris Campbell did. So I went back and actually watched the game film, which is not fun to watch Colorado game film, to see Laviska Shenault. And quite frankly, the reason why he's used the way he's used at Colorado is because he's by far the best player on that team. So, as a college coach, what are you going to do? You're going to get your best player the ball any way possible, and sometimes that's putting him at running back, letting him play quarterback, getting him quick screens, flare outs. So, over the past couple of weeks, I have definitely backed off of my sourness of Laviska Shenault, and I really do appreciate his game. He's 6'2", 220 pounds, so he's got the size. I'm still concerned about his testing measurables. I don't know how athletic he is, and he's got a foot injury, and that foot injury has plagued him halfway through the college football season last year, and has limited him during spring practices. He still hadn't been cleared, and wide receivers with foot injuries, I try to avoid those risks.
Yeah, you kind of need 2 feet to run routes in the NFL. I think I haven't really seen
Right?
anyone do it with 1 foot. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know.
No,
It's
you're
kind.
right.
I'm right. Good, good, good. My classes work. So when we think about 2020, right, we have a lot of. I just kind of want to go down like my list. I made a little bit of a list here. Of I'm gonna be butchering some of these names. Hopefully, I'm just kind of like the 2020 like notable names, and I'm definitely gonna be missing some because it's a deep class. But we have guys like DeAndre Swift, Travis Etienne, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers. You also have Eno Benjamin, J.K. Dobbins, Najee Harris, A.J. Dillon, my guy. Massachusetts got to represent. Anyways, Chuba Hubbard, might have butchered that. Jerry Jeudy, C.D. Lamb, Visca Chenault, T. Higgins, Tyler Johnson, Tylon Walls. You got Tua, Herbert, Fromm. And you can also give a shout out there to Big Albert O, the tight end out of Missouri, too. He shows some promise. But, right, that's a lot of names, man. That's a lot of names. One name, though, I kind of just want to throw out all those names so there's perspective. You might be higher or lower on some of them. But one I know you're higher on is Chuba Hubbard, who I added in there. Don't know if I'm saying the name right. He was sharing the
Chuba,
roster.
Chuba, Chuba,
Chuba.
Chuba.
Chuba. All right, we're saying Chuba. I got it. Chuba Hubbard. Whew, that's kind of weird. Chuba Hubbard. Why is this guy your favorite running back in the 2020 class?
He is, and let me preface favorite with best. He's not the best running back, but he's my favorite running back in this class. He's just Justice Hill, not this past season, but the season before last, was out freaking standing. I think he had over 1,400 rushing yards on the ground. It was just, he looked like a monster. Past season, it dipped to about 950 yards, and part of that was he did have a couple of injuries. Bigger reason was because Chuba Hubbard's emergence as a redshirt freshman. 6'1", 210 pounds. This kid has legit elite track speed. In high school, he ran a 10.5 800. And I don't know if you know how fast that is, but for a high school kid to run a 10.5, that is blazing. That is blazing speed. Out of Canada, he played in Canada and just absolutely dominated the competition out there. But he is of the running back. We talked about ETN. We talked about Jonathan Taylor. Hubbard is a true three-down back, right in the mold with DeAndre Swift. He's done it out of the backfield as a redshirt freshman. He had over 200 something receiving yards last year, over 20 receptions. You'd love that. And he's just a physical runner. He's got agility. He's got speed. He's got power. And I think that he is a dark horse this season for Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. He is that talented. And he's so young. If he comes out this year, he will enter the NFL at 20 years old. He'll be one of the youngest players in his class. So it's just his talent profile. He's going to test well. He's going to look like a monster. He is a very, very fun player to watch, and he's going to have an opportunity this season to absolutely light it up down there in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
I didn't really have heard about him, Chuba Hubbard here. Couldn't even pronounce his name right, but when you think about it, I don't know how fast he was when he ran that time there, but 210, he's really built there, 6'1", taller running back, right?
Yeah.
And Justice Hill gone, so he's got everything he needs here to put together a nice season. True 3-down workhorse. I don't remember how many passes this guy caught, but I believe you. Listen, I believe you, man. So 3-down workhorse, right? Potential, and that's valuable in the NFL. So I think it's just, man, 2020. There's gonna be maybe one or some of these guys are gonna get injured, but the thing is, especially at running back, it's so deep that one injury could suck, but it's not gonna kill the class, right? Like maybe it did with 2019 because it wasn't as deep. So
Yeah,
um,
it's going to be, and again, we hate for those things to happen, but it's inevitable. It's a part of the game. One, two, three injuries will not kill this class. It is just at the running back position, it's super deep, and I think that is part of the strategy that dynasty owners are going to have to sort of juggle come draft season next year. Do you take a top running back and maybe miss out on that top wide receiver, or do you take the top wide receiver early and then double back with a Chuba Hubbard maybe in the second, or Benjamin, or a player like Najee Harris? It's really going to be interesting to see how these drafts play out because I think it's going to be a lot of roster construction and depending on how teams are built.
yeah, 100%. Normally for me, I kind of want a player uh, that kind of accrues value immediately, right? And the running backs just do that. Rookie running backs have been a sensation for years and years and years, especially after some of these higher, better draft classes, such as 2020, when they get that first round draft capital and are given so many touches. So I normally lean more towards the running back unless I have a hole at wide receiver. Goodness is 2020 has both, right? So
Right,
you
right.
can't hate on that. But I kind of want to move on from 2020 for now, and just because time, right? I want to move on because I want to talk a little about 2021 here, and I kind of want you to talk about two things here. I want you to talk Justin Ross versus Rondale Moore. Who do you like more? Who do you like less? Both of them were outstanding as freshmen. Justin Ross, Rondale Moore, kind of a little bit different in players, right? Justin Ross, huge guy, right? Tall and skinny, right? 6'4", I
Oh
believe
yeah.
it is, 200, playing with Trevor Lawrence, we'll get to in a second. And then, so great system there, great quarterback. Then Rondale Moore, small, shifty guy. Tyreek Hill's kind of skills, right? Plays there at Purdue, not a good quarterback. So they're kind of almost polar opposites, but they're there as one and two, kind of for those wide receivers. So can I break down a comparison between the two of them? Who do you like more? Who do you like less? Do you like them both a lot? Is it just kind of hairs and splitting hairs of difference, or break those two down for me?
Well, that's really unfair that you have me doing this. Feel I feel dirty having to pick one over the other, so I'm going to try my best to answer your question and hedge my answer while I do it. But they're both, like you said, they're both phenomenal wide receiver prospects, and they are polar opposites. Rondell Moore is probably 5'9", maybe 5'10" on a good day, 190 pounds, 185, 190. And Justin Ross is 6'4", 205. So they're completely different wide receivers, but they are both dynamic in their own right. Now, I said that I don't like to comp players unless I feel really, really good about it. And I did comp Rondell Moore to an NFL potential Hall of Fame wide receiver, and that comp was Steve Smith. When I watch Rondell Moore play, I see young Carolina Panthers dominant Steve Smith. Speed, hands, agility, power, contact balance, return capability, just a complete, absolute dynamic playmaker. That's who Rondell Moore is. And he's not just a small guy. There was a video of him on Instagram or Twitter squatting over 600 pounds this spring at Purdue. I mean, and he's powerful. It shows on film. His legs are enormous. And he's just to come in as a true freshman and catch 114 passes for over 1,200 yards, to do what he did in the return game. He was named first team All American from every major sporting service that you can think of. He is dynamic. He is phenomenal. But Justin Ross is too. He only caught 46 passes last year. That's it, 46 balls for 1,000 yards on the dot and 9 TDs, averaging, I think it was 21.7 yards a reception. He is, and on the biggest stage in the college football playoffs, he shined and destroyed Notre Dame and tore up Alabama. I think, I don't know who I would pick over the other. It would be really, really hard for me to do that. If I were on the clock, I'm probably taking Rondell Moore, but that is no slight to Justin Ross. He's fantastic. And again, when you're playing with one of the best quarterbacks that we've ever seen in college football, potentially, it's only going to make his job a lot easier. And he has Travis Etienne in the backfield. He has T. Higgins on the other side of him. Rondell Moore is it. I mean, Purdue, that's what they have, and that's why they used him as much as they did. And that part of his game is concerning. I just hope, I hope he doesn't get injured because they use him everywhere: kick return, punt return, running back, wide receiver. I really hope that they don't wear him down because he's not a big guy. He's strong, but he's still the law of physics. He's not a big guy. You don't want him getting beat up this early in his career. But they're both outstanding players.
Yeah, and speaking of that Hall of Fame quarterback, if you just watch Alabama versus Clemson, I think you can kind of see why it's obvious. And Trevor Lawrence coming in there as a true freshman and just lighting up a weaker Alabama defense, but an Alabama defense, I couldn't do it. I'd throw too many interceptions. I'd be benched. I'd be like Nathan Peterman out there. We'd be, having competition there for interceptions. But Trevor Lawrence, why is this guy so hyped as a quarterback? I mean, we've heard maybe better than Andrew Luck, best quarterback since Andrew Luck, best quarterback since John Elway coming out of college. Trevor Lawrence hype train. Why is it so high? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it?
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. What doesn't he do? I mean, what does he not do well? As a true freshman, he came in there midway, through the season. Well, it wasn't midway, but it was early in the season. He was not the starter. It was Kelly Bryant. This guy didn't even throw more than 20 passes in a game until the sixth game of the season. And to lead that team to the college football national championship game and win it in dominating fashion, he can make every single throw you can ask him, the deep out from one hash to the other. That's like the barometer. If you're on the left hash and you can throw a deep out to the right hash, that's like, okay, this kid's got the arm strength. He's got accuracy. He's a leader. And you look at him and you'll think that he's just a pocket passer. He's a statue. No, he can move in the pocket. He can run. I made a joke on Twitter and I called him Trevor Vick. I mean, this guy can move. Now he needs to not take so many hits and get down because he's 6'6", but 6'6", 220 pounds, 215, whatever he is, he can make every throw. He is the best college quarterback from a thrower that I've seen since Andrew Luck. Absolutely. And I'm not the only person that feels that way. I used 24/7 Sports for my recruiting services, and they have him ranked as the number 6 prospect ever of all time. There's only one offensive player that they have ranked ahead of Trevor Lawrence, and that was Vince Young, who's one of the best college quarterbacks to ever play. And everybody else that was rated higher than Trevor Lawrence, they're all defensive players. Jadeveon Clowney, Ernie Sims, Sean Gary, Robert Kenichi. They're all defensive players. I mean, he's the number 6 prospect that they've ever scouted coming out of high school. He's just that good. He's phenomenal. I believe that there are no sure things, especially in Debbie. He's not coming out for another years, but he's the closest damn thing to a sure thing that I've seen.
Well, we like sure things, and Dynasty fantasy football, Devy football. We like sure things because rookies you never know with. So Trevor Lawrence, awesome kid. I mean, a 2021 101 in a super flex league, in a rookie draft. That's going to be super, super valuable. This guy's going to be drafted super, super early everywhere, and it's going to be warranted. So I kind of want to take a step back And just before we wrap up here, kind of talk general, right?
Yeah.
So we've had a lovely podcast here, around 50 minutes, but I want to know, for our viewers, for anyone really listening, honestly, what's kind of the one thing you want them to take away from today's podcast episode that maybe you talked about that you didn't get to talk about? Like, what's kind of your takeaway on, it could be Debbie in general, 2020, 2021, whatever you want it to be. I kind of like, what's your life lesson here on the Fantasy Flavor podcast?
So here's the lesson that I want people to take away, and it's Debbie related, but it's very much applicable to your traditional dynasty leagues. Whether it's IDP, whether it's Superflex, whether it's PPR standard, this is why you need to pay attention to college football. Here's why. And although I am a Debbie analyst, I use this information more so to help out my current dynasty rosters. The more you know about prospects who will be coming out in 2020, in 2021, and hell, even 2022, the more you know about these guys, the earlier you know about them, the better you are equipped as dynasty owners to make strategic moves during your current season to position your team for long term success. And what I mean by that is if you know that you can potentially get a Trey Sermon or a Henry Ruggs or a Chuba Hubbard who have the talent to have been first round picks in 2019, if you know you can get those guys in the second, maybe, just maybe, during your season, throw out some offers for 2020 seconds. Probably acquiring, you're too late to get 2020 first. You're not going to be able to get those. But grab some 2020 seconds. Get as many 2020 thirds as you can right now. Start thinking about while nobody else is thinking about the 2021 class. Everyone knows Trevor Lawrence. They probably couldn't give you two other quarterbacks in 2021. Ask for a 2021 first in trade packages. When you're trying to get Tyler Boyd in October because you're making your playoff run, ask for a 2021 second. Nobody is thinking about those picks this far out unless you're playing in very, very savvy leagues, but you'll know that second round is going to be loaded. I might not be able to get a 2020 first out of him, but he'll definitely trade me a 2022 second. Use the information that you gain from watching college, from listening to Debbie podcast, from listening to this podcast when you have Debbie analysts on. Use that information to make moves throughout your season. It's not just about you knowing the player so you can go draft them. No, 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 no. Use that knowledge so you can get assets that you want for those picks. I tell people this, and I know this is about to sound crazy as hell. This might be the time to sell 2020 first. This might be the time to sell those 2021 first pick, 2020 first round picks. And definitely when you're on the clock next year, you may be able to get a king's ransom for 2020 first, for 2020 first. If you've got a rookie Debbie whore like myself who is just geeking out over these prospects, the Jalen Ragers, the CeeDee Lambs, well, you know what, Ray? I would like Keenan Allen and Austin Hooper and a 2020 second, and I'll give you my first. You might have some people that will just bite on that because here's the thing: as talented as these guys are right now that I'm telling you about, and as excited as I am about them, they're no sure thing. Jalen Rager can get to the NFL and completely bust. DeAndre Swift can land on a roster and be buried on the depth chart, get hurt, and his career is over. But what we know is the people who are playing right now, the Keenan Allens, the Julio Joneses, the Adam Thielens, the Stephon Diggs, those players are producing. Those players are definitely going to receive 100 plus targets. They're going to have the opportunity. So using this information, don't just use it to go acquire players. Think about what you can do to kind of trade some assets away and gain win now assets now. I know everyone wants to build for the future. I know that's I want to be good for a long time. You need to be trying to win each and every year because things change so much. Your entire roster that looks like it's built and set up for the future, one unfortunate police incident, one head coaching change, one torn ACL, and your whole roster is done. You need to be trying to win now. And if you can acquire elite talent right now from somebody who's willing to give up the farm for a 2020 first round pick, you need to do it because you'll know. Hey, in the second round, there's still going to be phenomenal talent that I can get. Why not get Antonio Brown and something else right now that's going to help me win today? So don't just use this information to kind of get your notebook together, to get your draft plan together. Use this information to be strategic. This dynasty is chess, not checkers. If you're playing checkers in dynasty, you're doing it wrong. You need to be thinking 2, 3 years out. I know right now that in 2022, Trey Sanders, Zach Charbonnet, Garrett Wilson, Frank Ladson. Those are going to be players who are coming out in 2022. I'm if I can trade for 2022 picks right now, throw in a 2022 first. Who the hell is thinking about that 3 years out? But if you're smart and you're savvy and you pay attention and you listen to this podcast and you pay attention to the right people, you'll have that information and you'll be able to position your team for, like I said, short and long term success.
Well, that was motivational. There's a huge crowd of an audience right now just applauding for you. That's awesome. I definitely agree. You got to think ahead. If everyone in your league's kind of zigging, don't be afraid to zag, right? Because
Absolutely.
you want to do stuff different. You don't want to be like everybody else because you're always gonna find value where everyone else is kind of thinking differently. Because if they're thinking differently, they might not be thinking as highly, whether it is stacking up a whole bunch of future picks and going crazy. And you can unload those last second. So you're not committed to those picks. Or just sell them for the player. I mean, if someone's proven and committed, on average, around 5 to 8 players, really, and 8's very generous, pan out in the draft class. So while we're talking about all these names, half of them could bust, honestly. Just, you got to be honest. So I think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, all these guys aren't going to hit. We're excited, and I think that's a great point. We're excited about all these guys. We're excited about this class. There's no way that picks 1 through 12 are going to hit and become Pro Bowlers. There's no way that all of these running backs are going to turn into the next, Alvin Kamara's or the next Christian. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But what will happen, we know for a fact Antonio Brown is getting 150 plus targets next season. We know that Christian McCaffrey is going to handle 80% of the workload. We know those things are going to happen. So, yes, there are certain players that you got to take a shot on. You've got to build your roster. But, I look at people who have 5, 6, 2021st, and they've just completely destroyed their roster. And I just say you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong by giving up everything to acquire these picks for things that aren't sure. As much as we are excited about these guys, they haven't even put on an NFL helmet yet. So if you can use this information to take advantage of people in your league, doggone right, you need to do it. You need to be making those type of moves.
100%. I kind of have one final question here for you, if you don't mind, here before we wrap up. Where can I find you at if I want to check you out here? If I'm a viewer of the podcast, where can I find some of the work you do? Maybe your Twitter, any other forms of social media you have. Where can I find you, Ray?
Well, I do everything. A lot of what I do is on Twitter. You can find me at RayGQ. That's RayGQue, RayGQ. And my podcast is Destination Debbie. So at Destination Debbie, hashtag DDP. That's where, I speak a lot about my Debbie Dynasty prospects. And I do it quickly. I like to do it as quick as possible so people can listen to podcasts like yours and check out other social media platforms. But Twitter, my podcast, and I am the senior Debbie analyst for Dynasty Nerds. So if you go over to dynastynerds.com, I've got a lot of work there, Debbie related and just regular traditional Dynasty League content with my sleepers and things of that nature. So Twitter, Dynasty Nerds, that's where you could find me.
Awesome. And like I said, I like everyone here that's listening to this podcast to check out his podcast because this is why I have people on here. I'm not some expert who spends hours grinding film or crunching numbers on my keyboard at 3 a.m., right? I do this interview series so I can learn more and you guys can learn more. And this is what's so valuable here is because I want you guys to check out Ray. Even if you own just a couple 2020 picks, invest in your future. Don't be dumb. Be more knowledgeable than everyone else in your league. You have a 2020 first because people told you? That's dumb, in my opinion. Learn about it. And people like Ray will teach you about what you're investing in because you want to play smarter, not harder. But with that being said, that's all the time we have here today. I want to thank Ray so much. So late at night here. He has family commitments, but he comes on here for the podcast. I really, really appreciate it here. We had a little bit of trouble waking up at first, but I'm so grateful I was persistent with it because I found an awesome fellow fantasy football addict here. So thank you so much, Ray. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and I'd love to be on anytime you'd have me.
You better not say that. 'Cause I'd love to have you on more. So, with that being said, that's all the time we have here today. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Fantasy Flavor podcast. We're going to have more people on here for these interviews. Thank you to Ray once again, and I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day.